flere, synes jeg, for dette her gleder jeg meg til å høre. I'll do this in English. After some tricks, connected a colleague from Australia. So we have Gitte Keidser from Australia online. She's going to talk about self-fitting hearing aids. And the reason is that I've seen her before, and the topic is very much into what we've been talking about these couple of days, about new technology and what we would do with our work situation. So and Gitte is working at NAL. We all know NAL. NAL is a fitting strategy, but it's also National Acoustic Laboratories in America, Australia. So she's well known for work within hearing aids. So, without what is the term, further ado, let's hear Gitte from Australia.
Thank you very much, Olav, and a very good evening here from Australia to you all in Oslo. Now, it has already been a long day for me, but a short night for you, I hear. But I'm very excited to be given this opportunity to talk to you about our work on self-fitting hearing aids. We've been working on self-fitting hearing aids at NAL for the past 8 years or so. And during this time, various people have been involved in the project at different times, but I'd particularly like to acknowledge my colleague, Convery, who has been part of the project team from the very beginning and who had done much of the hard work in collecting and analyzing data. Before I begin the presentation, I thought I should briefly say a few words about who I am and how the work on self-fitting hearing aid has been funded. So I'm a senior research scientist at the National Acoustic Laboratories, where I've been employed for the past 26 years, and I'm now there managing a team of engineers and audiologists working on projects in the area of hearing devices and rehabilitation. My own work has primarily been on the effect that hearing aids and advanced signal processing strategies have on user preference and performance. For those who don't know, NAL is located in Sydney within the newly established Australian Hearing Hub, which is the building you can see here. Yep, you can see here. And that building is located on the campus of Macquarie University. Now, what many do not know is that NAL is actually the research arm of Australian Hearing, which is the government organisation that provides subsidised hearing health care to children and pensioners in Australia. So this connection brings us at NAL in close association with both clinicians and people with hearing impairment, and it is, I think, one of NAL's great strengths. I'm also appointed as a professor at the University of Queensland, where I co-supervise a couple of PhD students. So both NAL and the University of Queensland are partners of the Hearing Cooperative Research Centre in Australia, who is the recipient of a very large research grant from the Australian government and who has been funding the self-fitting hearing aid project right from the beginning. So just finally, I'm just going to declare that I have no conflict of interest in self-fitting hearing aids. Okay, so a quick overview of my talk. I'll start by introducing you to the self-fitting concept and present you with some commercial examples. Then I'll present you with results from a large-scale study we completed earlier this year, and that looked at the clinical viability of one of the commercially available self-fitting hearing aid products by determining how well older adults can manage the self-fitting process and what outcomes they obtain with a self-fitted hearing aid. After that, I'll discuss who may benefit from self-fitting hearing aids and under what model the self-fitting hearing aid is best dispensed. Now, when I ask people to mention the most significant effect technological advancement has had on acoustic hearing devices, they invariably start talking about changes to either the form factor or the evolution of processing capability or features of devices. So they will, as examples of advances in form factor, mention apps for smartphone that turn the phone into a hearing assisting device, and they will point to the small multimodal earbuds, which can amplify sound and many other things, and that are referred to as hearables. And as for advances in processing capability and features, wireless transmission of sound via Bluetooth and binaural signal processing that promises significant improvements in signal-to-noise ratio and restoration of localization are some typical examples. No one seems to think about the evolution of user controls, which to me is by far the most interesting development in hearing devices. It started early in the last century by hearing aid users being given access to the volume control with which they could change the overall gain. Then 40 to 50 years ago, the tone control was introduced that enabled users to also change the slope of the gain frequency response. Then in the late 1980s, digital programmable hearing aids were introduced. So they were devices that were equipped with analog components for sound processing, but a digital control circuit. So these devices had multiple memories, which made it possible for users to choose between different hearing aid settings to suit different listening situations. Then early this century, when hearing aids had transitioned to fully digital devices, it became possible for hearing aid users to make permanent changes to the hearing aids, either via a training or learning algorithm implemented into the hearing aid, or by accessing sophisticated fitting software made available to hearing aid users. And the latest development that was presented commercially for the first time in 2013, so about 4 years ago, is self-fitting hearing aids, which are aids that enable the user to take complete control of the hearing aid fitting without needing the assistance of a hearing healthcare professional. So a self-fitting hearing aid is a device in which the entire traditional fitting process, including measurements of threshold, the prescription of the needed hearing aid settings, and any fine-tuning, is performed self-directed and automated. Now, for this to be possible, the hearing aid must have an onboard tone generator and an algorithm that enables the user to perform an automated in situ hearing test. It must have an onboard prescription formula that uses the measured in situ threshold as input to determine the initial settings of the hearing aid parameters. And by providing the user with access to controls, either on board the device or in an app, with which they can manipulate some of the hearing aid parameters, the user can perform further fine-tuning as needed. Now, depending on the form factor of the self-fitting hearing aid, the customization of the device, such as selecting the right size ear chip and tubing length, may also need to be self-directed. I'd like to note that some people refer to hearing aids that can be adjusted from a default setting to the user's preference as self-fitting hearing aids. But in our opinion, these devices really only enable the user to self-adjust or fine-tune the setting, starting the process here from often quite a randomly chosen baseline response. For a device to be classified as a truly self-fitting device, it must be possible for the user to measure the threshold to arrive at a prescribed hearing aid setting. In our opinion, the evolution of user control, which most people seem to ignore, has a much greater chance to disrupt the traditional clinical pathway than any advancement in form factor or processing capability. Changes in those dimensions simply provide the clinicians and consumers with more choices to meet the consumer's needs and preferences. So I mentioned earlier that the first commercial self-fitting hearing aid was introduced in 2013. This device was the Bluetooth communication-like device by Soundwave Solutions, shown here. To our knowledge, there are currently only 2 online providers in the US that, following our definition of self-fitting, sell self-fitting hearing aids. So there's Soundwave Solution and Viability. There are a few crowd-funded initiatives brewing, so I'm sure we will see more self-fitting hearing aids pop up in the future. Actually, there's a small company just down the road from where you are in Denmark who has a self-fitting product that they are currently awaiting medical approval for by the European notified body. The company is called Orientis, if you like to look it up. As for the current self-fitting hearing aids, each of these companies have 2 self-fitting products on the market, of which one is a receiver in the canal hearing aid. Within each company, the 2 products provide the same signal processing capabilities that include processing strategies found in most traditional hearing aids, such as multi-channel wide dynamic range compression, noise suppression, and feedback cancellation. And the Soundwave Solution devices also feature directional microphone. Now, to self-fit the hearing aid from Soundwave Solution, the user takes advantage of inbuilt Bluetooth technology to connect the devices to a free app that can be downloaded to a computer or a mobile device, and that take the user through the self-fitting process. To self-fit the devices from iHear Medical, the user must, in addition, purchase a small USB programmer and a set of cables that then enable the user to connect their devices to a computer, from where they then can access the free app and guide them through the self-fitting process. I'd like to point out that both companies have a helpline in place to support the customers who choose to self-fit. Now, interestingly, the self-fitting concept for hearing aid was actually patented back in 1984, so more than 30 years ago. But back then, technically, the device could not realize. When we about 10 years ago now realized that a self-fitting hearing aid was possible to implement, we thought it was only a matter of time before they would become commercially available. And so we decided to start investigating if the concept was clinically feasible. In particular, we were interested in to what extent hearing aid users could correctly manage the various steps involved in the self-directed process, as of course being able to set up the hearing aid correctly is clearly fundamental for the outcome with the self-fitting hearing aid. Our very early research was conducted using either conventional hearing aid component or offline computer-based simulations. What we learned from this research is that to enable users to customize and place the hearing aid directly in the ear, the hearing aid should ideally be equipped with a diagnostic test of low-frequency leakage that can inform the user if the ear tip is too loose or in the ear, or if it does not properly seal the ear canal. The ear tip in itself must be designed so it is easy to insert and must with clear instructions for how to do so. The algorithm that manages the automated hearing test should ideally account for the device's transducer and pop responses for any ambient noise, and for an residual low frequency leakage, and should also be able to handle erratic response pattern. To guide the user through the automated in situ hearing test, clear instructions are important, as is an intuitive response interface. These two factors are also important for correctly guiding the user through any fine-tuning process. Now, these are the features of what we consider an optimal implementation of a self-fitting hearing aid. They are not necessarily the features you find in the current or future products, but the requirements outlined on this slide here are possible to meet. And on this background, we have concluded that, at least in theory, the self-fitting concept is feasible. The only way to find out if current implementations are clinically viable is, of course, to investigate how well potential users can manage the hearing aids and what outcomes they obtain with them. So with self-fitting hearing aids now commercially available, we of course wanted to address this question. So using the receiver-in-canal device example solution, we conducted a study to examine both how adults with hearing impairment can manage the self-fitting process and what outcome they obtain with a self-fitted hearing aid. We invited 30 experienced and 30 new hearing aid users to take part in the study. So our experienced hearing aid users had an average of 10 years experience with amplification, varying from 1.5 to 37 years. The experienced hearing aid users, as you can see, also have a significant higher degree of hearing loss than the users. The two groups were, however, well balanced in terms of the distribution, so 2/3 of participants were my age. The average age was 72 years for both groups. And they also balanced up the points obtained on the Montreal Cognitive Assessment Test. So the average point was 26 for both groups. And for those of you who are not familiar with this test, score of 26 points or more is considered within the normal range of this particular age group. So as you can see from the ranges of the points that we measured, not all participants were actually in a prime mental state. As I mentioned before, the device used for this study was the receiver-in-canal hearing aid by sample solution. To self-fit this device, the user must first identify which of two devices coming in a box is for the left and which is for the right ear. They then have to select an appropriate size ear chip and tubing lengths for each ear and correctly insert the devices into each ear. And the rest of the self-fitting process we refer to as navigation, which involves connecting the hearing aid to the mobile device and then downloading and opening an app that enables the user to perform a pure tone test and to perform fine-tuning if needed. Participants in our study were invited to our laboratory to self-fit the devices in a test booth. To guide them through the process, they had access to illustrated instructions in PowerPoint format that were designed best practice health literacy principles. And embedded in the PowerPoint slides were captioned video clips that demonstrated some of the key steps, such as how to insert the hearing aid into the ear, how to change the ear chips, and how to pair the hearing aid via Bluetooth to the mobile device. Now, participants were left by themselves during the task, but they were monitored through video and audio recordings by the experimenter. And to parallel the helpline that, for example, the two online providers of self-fitting hearing aids has in place, the participants were given a phone number and told that they could call on a clinical assistant if they had any questions or needed help with the self-fitting task. So the clinical assistant was admin staff, IT staff from our laboratory who had no audiological qualifications, who had been trained in how to perform the self-fitting process of the particular test device. After self-fitting, participants wore the device for 12 weeks in the field, after which they returned to the laboratory to have a range of outcomes measured, which include coupler gain, hearing aid handling and management skills, speech recognition, performance in noise, as well as self-reported benefit and satisfaction in various domains. During the field trial, participants could continue to contact the clinical assistant with questions or ask for help. Experienced hearing aid users, by the way, also completed these outcomes for their conventionally fitted hearing aids, and they did that either before or a few weeks after the trial with the self-fitting hearing aids. Okay, so to the results. So first I will take at the ability to self-fit. So of the 60 participants, 68% obtained what are referred to as user-driven fittings. It means that they either manage the self-fitting task completely independently by following the instructions step by step and accurately, or they correctly identify difficulties with certain steps of the self-fitting process and then sought and obtained help from the clinical assistant. The remaining 32% obtained what are referred to as clinician-driven fittings. Among these, 3 gave up on the task altogether, and the remaining participants happily went along with the task, but did not recognize that some efforts were made in the process of setting up the hearing aids. So before sending them out in the field, they had a free assist session with the clinical assistant. So what were the steps in the self-fitting process that participants had come up with? The table here lists the various steps and the percentage of participants who correctly managed each step. So in terms of the physical handling of the hearing aids, participants generally did rather well for the instructions they were provided with. Actually, they did much better than what we have seen in many of our earlier studies, and we contribute this to the video instructions that we introduced for the first time in this study. What the participants particularly had problems with were with the use of app, specifically the pairing of the hearing aid to the phone and the assignment of each device to right and left ear within the app that they found difficult, but also navigating the hearing test caused some problems. So these issues are more specific to the test device, but would need to be addressed in any future self-fitting product. And do we know who the participants who successfully obtained user-driven fittings and who we could consider candidates for fitting hearing aids? Well, yes, we found that these participants were foremost more likely to actually own a smartphone or tablet, and therefore presumably they found the entire navigation step less daunting. Interestingly, the second highest predictor was better ability to manage the effects of hearing loss in everyday life, which particularly included the experienced hearing aid users. Other factors with weaker predictive values were a stronger internal health local control, higher hearing aid self-efficacy, and better cognitive function. Now, together, these 5 factors correctly classified 80% of our participants. It is worth noting, though, that considering all the first 2 factors, we correctly classify as much as 75% of participants. Now, none of these factors are currently routinely measured in clinical practice, but they could be helpful if we wanted to determine if a client would be a candidate for performing the self-fitting process when at least they have access to a knowledgeable person. So moving on to the outcomes data. First, apart from the 3 participants who withdrew from the study during the self-fitting task, another 5 withdrew during the field trial for reasons such as illness, ear tip discomfort, and difficulty with the technology. So we ended up with outcomes data from 38 participants who obtained user-driven fittings and 14 who had clinician-driven fittings. So in this population, who all were fitted with the same self-fitting hearing aids, we first examined if the type of fitting, so user versus clinician-driven fittings, had an effect on outcomes. Now, because there were some differences in degree of hearing loss and cognitive function between these 2 groups, we controlled for these variables in our analysis. And when we did so, we found no significant difference in selective gain, speech recognition in noise performance, or in self-reported benefit satisfaction or hearing disability reduction. So in the same self-fitting device, we saw no effect of the fitting process on the outcomes. Okay, so next, we then looked at a subgroup of 22 experienced hearing aid users who were successful driving the self-fitting process, and we wanted to compare their outcomes with the self-fitted hearing aids to those obtained with their conventionally fitted own hearing aids that had been set up by a hearing aids professional. So the graph here shows the mean Coupler gains across frequencies for a 65 dB input level as measured for the participants' conventionally fitted hearing aids, so the brown curve, and their self-fitted hearing aids, the green curve here. As you can see, the participants ended up with significantly higher gain levels in the self-fitted aid across the low frequencies. This difference can be explained by the proprietary prescription formula used by samples and also some leakage occurring during the in situ audiometry test that is not accounted for in the implementation. And therefore, the discrepancy we see here is not really a result of who were responsible for the fitting of the aid. And despite the difference in gain, there was no significant difference in speech recognition scores obtained with the 2 hearing aids, which suggests that the resulting gain setting off the self-fitting hearing aids, despite being more than what participants were used to, were acceptable. Moving on to the self-reported measures. So the first graph here shows the reduced participation restrictions experienced in the social and emotional domains as measured by the hearing handicap inventory for the elderly, when participants were wearing the self-fitted hearing aids and when they were wearing the conventionally fitted hearing aid. A higher bar means more reduction or greater benefit from the hearing aids, as it shows the difference between aided and unaided scores. Now, statistically, there was no significant difference between hearing aids on participation restriction. The next graph here shows the reduced activity limitation experienced with each hearing aid for ease of communication, listening in background noise, listening in reverberation, and aversiveness of sound. These were measured with the abbreviated profile of the hearing aid benefit questionnaire. Again, a higher bar means more reduction or greater benefit from the hearing aid. Now, although there was a tendency for participants to report more benefits from the self-fitting hearing aids and listening in voice, this difference in benefit score was not significant. Reports from participants did suggest that at least some of them found that the directional microphone on the self-fitting hearing aid was better than the one that they had in their conventional fitted hearing aid. On the other hand, significantly less aversiveness was reported with the conventionally fitted hearing aids than with the self-fitting hearing aid, which we assume is because the prescribed FDO was set higher in the self-fitting hearing aid and could not be adjusted. So the difference in self-reported benefit that we see here is probably more due to the technical implementation of the hearing aid and not to who set up the hearing aids. Finally, the last graph shows the rated satisfaction with each hearing aid for positive effect, negative feature, and personal image as measured with the satisfaction and daily living questionnaire. Here we found that participants reported significantly higher levels of satisfaction with the conventionally fitted hearing aid, both for positive effect and also for personal image that probe the opinions of the hearing aids. Now here the form factor of the self-fitting hearing aid probably play a big role. So for example, to be able to handle Bluetooth transmission from the hearing aid itself, it has a rather large battery that makes the body of the self-fitting hearing aid twice the size and not heavier of that of a traditional receiver in the canal hearing aid. Also, there is one style of ear tip available for this hearing aid that comes in 3 sizes, with the smallest size still being too large for small ears. The ear tips also are closed rather than open, which did seem to have a negative effect on sound quality for some participants. And finally, while many did like the rechargeable batteries used in the self-fitting hearing aids, the 14 to 16 hours of battery life between charge did not always last the full day, which was mentioned as a disadvantage by participants. But again, it is worth noting that the reason for the significant differences in self-reported satisfaction are due to the physical implementation of the hearing aid rather than set up with the aids. Okay, so to quickly summarize, when we compare outcomes in 2 different populations who were both fitted with the self-fitting hearing aid, but other had clinician-driven or self-directed fittings, there were no significant differences. When we, in the same population, compare outcomes with 2 different hearing aids that were either self-fitted or fitted conventionally by a hearing health professional, there were some significant differences in favor of the conventionally fitted hearing aid. But these differences were due to design issues rather than who had set up the hearing aid. Now there's one outcomes measure I haven't mentioned yet, and that is the measure of hearing aid handling and management skills. The data are shown here in percentage points for the self-fitting hearing aid, with distinction between clinician-driven and user-driven fittings, and is shown here for the conventionally fitted hearing aid. I have chosen to show this data consolidated this way because, as you can see, participants obtained a perfect score with the conventionally fitted hearing aid, while significantly lower scores were obtained with the self-fitting hearing aids, with the lowest score obtained by those who required full assistance with the fitting. In fact, there was a significant correlation between lower cognitive function and poor hand and management skills with the self-fitting hearing aid. And again, the primary difficulties with the self-fitting hearing aid were around using the app to make adjustments to the hearing aid. So This data, I think, emphasizes an important role clinicians play in the traditional hearing healthcare model, where part of the service is counselling of the clients in how to continue to use and maintain their hearing aids. In the context of self-fitting, the hearing aid users would have to develop these skills independently, and for this particular self-fitting hearing aid, that means that the user must also be reasonably proficient in pairing devices using Bluetooth and navigating through an app. And what else do we know about the ongoing use of the self-fitting hearing aids during the field trial? You might remember that participants continue to access the clinical assistant during the field trial, and the clinical assistant kept a brief log of the questions they received. So in total, 38 inquiries were made by 23 individuals. As you can see in the table here, over half of the inquiries were specific to the hearing aids and were rather technical in nature, meaning that they were adequately addressed by the trained clinician. However, there were inquiries that related to common audiological issues and that required troubleshooting subsequent management by an audiologist. And in our study, the clinical assistant escalated these particular questions to an experienced audiologist. I also like to note that we found that some of the new hearing aid users who participated in the study after the self-fitting task would spontaneously start asking the clinical assistant questions such as, now, how do I interpret the fact that people can see now can see my disability, and where do I see the noisy background? These were questions that the clinical assistant did not feel qualified to answer. And again, these observations demonstrate the need for ongoing support of people who has not previously sought help with their hearing problem and who choose to self-fit. And while many of these inquiries can be handled by a person who is very knowledgeable of the technology involved in self-fitting, there is clearly also a need for those who self-fit to be able to access audiological support. So, looking at all the evidence that the study I have just presented you with has provided, we conclude that the self-fitting concept is clinically viable, provided users have access to good instructions and knowledgeable support. So specifically, we saw self-directed fittings resulted in outcomes comparable to those obtained with clinician-driven fittings, both within and between hearing aids. When we found significant differences in outcomes, they could be traced differences in the physical characteristics of the hearing aids and had nothing really to do with who was responsible for the fitting. The fact that participants tend to favor the implementation of their conventional hearing aids when there were significant differences in benefit and satisfaction suggests that there is scope for improving the implementation of the self-fitting hearing aid that we have tested. So in particular, the app and physical characteristic of the hearing aid could move with some adjustments. And in fact, Soundword Solution is currently addressing many of the issues that we identified in this study. So now that we've established that self-fitting is a clinically viable concept, we may start thinking about who would want self-fitting hearing aids and how they should be dispensed. Because self-fitting hearing aids can be set up to a prescribed fitting without the need to see a hearing health professional, they would seem to be ideal for consumers who A, live remotely and who have unreliable or no access to audiological services, B, can't afford the professional service fee, or C, like to take full control of their own treatment. For these reasons, the self-fitting hearing aid seems well placed in the direct-to-consumer model where it is currently found. So the strengths of the direct consumer model do tend to include convenience and lower cost, and would send an appeal to people who like to do things by themselves, or at least want to be more involved in setting up and doing it. There are, however, some obvious shortcomings of the direct-to-consumer model if dispensing the hearing aids remotely, which is typical of internet providers. So, for example, consumers buy their hearing aids online will miss out of a proper assessment that could identify any of ear diseases and or contraindications for fitting with hearing aids. Also, without prior assessment of the individual's hearing problem, it is also uncertain what form factor and processing capabilities would best meet the consumer's need. And finally, the direct-to-consumer model does tend to be device-focused, but it is worth remembering that hearing aid intervention is not a cure and will in many cases not address the psychosocial effects of living with a hearing loss. So I like to point out that the use of speaker audiology or confrontations via Skype will overcome some of these factors or shortcomings, but the physical examinations are more challenging, except that I inevitably do feel confident that these problems will also be solved down the track. I'm aware that already there are some initiatives that have been made to address these shortcomings. So, for example, Sapala and colleagues are working on a questionnaire that is being designed to predict the risk of ear disease in the individual. So it asks questions about status and ear disease symptoms to predict if disease risk in time. And preliminary data obtained with this questionnaire actually look quite promising. And in this context, it is also worth noting that the proportion of ear diseases in people with hearing loss in these days are not exactly alarming. So this table shows the predicted proportion of various ear diseases in a sample of 500,000 people over 50 years of age who have a hearing loss. And so you can see in total only 67% presented with a disease, and half of these incidents were cerebral impaction. So this does, of course, that we should not care or be concerned about leaving ear diseases unidentified, but I think that the figures serve well to provide a picture of the risk from which consumers at least can make an informed decision. Also, during our early work on self-fitting hearing aids, we tested out a method for predicting the presence of a conductive component to the hearing loss by combining results from a standard tone testing area and from another air conduction test where tones are presented in a modulated voice. So we hypothesized that while a person with normal hearing would show threshold within the normal range of those tests, and a person with pure hearing loss would show thresholds outside the normal range of those tests. A person with a conductive loss would show threshold outside the normal range on the tone inquiry test because of loss of sensitivity, but would show threshold within the normal range on the tone in noise test due to normal cochlear tuning. So without going into details, the hypothesis was proven with the prediction of conductive loss being more robust at lower frequencies and for larger airborne gaps. So while neither our tone and noise test nor the ear disease probing questionnaire are perfect substitutes for an actual physical examination of the ear, they serve to demonstrate the possibility of overcoming the current limitations of the direct-to-consumer model down the track. Okay, so now let's turn to the traditional hearing healthcare model, because in this model, the coin is clearly flipped around, with the shortcomings of the direct-to-consumer model becoming the advantages to consumers and vice versa. The big question here is, why would you as a clinician even begin to consider dispensing self-fitting hearing aids within the traditional model? Well, provided the actual hearing aid meets the standards of traditional hearing aid, which, for example, the devices from Soundward Solution and I Hear Medical do, it would simply provide another option for the clients who either like to be more involved in setting up their hearing aid or who prefer more flexible arrangements with respect to what services to access. Also, and perhaps more importantly from the clinician's perspective, by leaving a lot of the automated procedures associated with hearing aid fitting in the hands of capable clients, the clinician may free up time to spend more efficiently with clients who have greater needs. And I also think that the traditional model is better positioned to run an effective self-fitting hearing aid support infrastructure consisting of trained and professional personnel to address the many and varied inquiries that people with hearing loss have. So on this note, to round up the presentation, so let me just quickly summarize what we sort of covered in this presentation. So I've shown how technological advancement of user control in acoustic hearing aids has led to completely self-fitting hearing aids being commercially available, where self-fitting implies that the consumer can achieve a prescribed setting by themselves without needing access to a hearing aid professional. I have presented you with empirical data that show that with an optimal implementation, clear instructions, and access to infrastructure, the self-fitting hearing aid concept is clinically viable. And finally, I argue that while the self-fitting hearing aid concept clearly suits the direct-to-consumer model, it could also be dispensed in the traditional model with benefits to both the consumer and clinician. So thank you very much for your attention. I just quickly like to acknowledge Soundward Solution who kindly provided the test devices for our recent study, all our colleagues who act as clinical assistants, the manufacturers volunteered part in the study and were provided such a rich set of data, and also colleagues outside of NAL for their assistance with different aspects of the self-fitting project. So I will now exit the presentation mode, and I think, emerge on your screen, I think, to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? We have one.
Yep.
See, is your video on?
Yeah, getting there. It should be coming shortly.
Oh yes, here you are.
Hello?
I can see you.
Gitte, can you hear me?
No,
No?
it's Visco from Denmark who's calling. I think I have to relay the question.
Okay. Gitte, you mentioned early in your presentation, or in the beginning, that the factors accounting for success with this procedure was something about ability for self-management of your health situation. I was wondering, do you have any suggestions for how do you test that? I mean, is there any way of assessing whether people are of that sort of quality or not?
That is a difficult question to. Did you get that?
No, I could only sort of hear a little bit. I heard that Nikolai asked for some particular data, I think, on the quality of.
He comes up here and you can talk to him.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea. Yeah.
You said that you found these two factors that accounted for, say, 75% of the behavior in cases, which 75% of people would be suitable for this procedure. And one of them, the second one was like self-management ability or something like that.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea about how you test for that?
We do actually, but only because we are investigating this at our laboratory at the moment, and obviously use the tool in this particular study. So there are generic self-management assessment questionnaires around that are being used in other chronic health areas, and we have been trialing one such self-management assessment tool, and we're actually finding really quite interesting data with that are being published separately.
Okay.
It's
all on its way.
Okay. And then just one more question, maybe slightly teasing. How does it feel for somebody at NAL to see that devices that were not fitted in accordance with NAL did equally well with those other ones? I mean, with the ones that were fitted according to NAL. Did you show that the performance was roughly the same in speech, noise and stuff? I mean, they were clearly not fitted to the NAL rationale, those who got the soundword solutions.
That's absolutely right. How do we feel? Look, I mean, I don't think there is I don't think we have any problems with that as such. I mean, obviously these fittings were acceptable to the client, and as we also know, I mean, there are different, like all the manufacturers have their own proprietary fitting rationale. So the fact that we still think that combining or optimizing both comfort and speech intelligibility and being able to wear the devices at such a setting for a long period of time. I mean, yes, we obviously still think that medical tool will do a better job, but look, yes, data show that you can get good outcomes with alternative settings.
Okay, so now we've been through teasing from the other side of the globe.
All right.
Other questions? You should really come up here if you want to question her. Okay. The people are relatively quiet over here.
All right, I do realize it's early morning in your part of the world.
Yes. I think we'll thank you for an excellent presentation and interesting work. And the two of us can communicate details later, I guess, if there's something else. Thank you so much.
Yeah. You're most welcome, and just feel free to send me an email if you have any questions. Oh, well, enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Have a good day. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Okay. That was an experiment. I have to do something about that sound quality. I know. Let's do that the next time. There's something. Oh yeah, you're not talking English now. Sounds better in English, doesn't it? Cool. Anyway, neste foredrag etter en pause. En halvtimes pause, så klokka 10 så prøver vi igjen. Da blir det live.